When you moved from ChatGPT to Claude Code, you were sold a promise. It's going to run your repetitive work across all your tools. It will handle your admin, your ops, your outreach, and it will do it all in the background, all while you sleep. Yada, yada, yada. So be honest with yourself for a second. Has that actually happened? For most of you, the answer is probably no. You're still sitting at the screen, typing one prompt at a time and doing the same work as before, just in a different window, promising yourself you'll get round to building that workflow eventually. I do know that feeling, trust me. But the reason isn't you though, and it isn't the tool either. It's that the features that deliver on that promise, the ones that actually let it run without you, you haven't switched on yet, or you don't know where to start. But the good news is, it's only a few hours of work away. So stitch those right few features together, and you can get work happening while you're not even at your desk. So let me show you the features that close the gap between what you were promised in the first place and what you actually got. And we've broken it down into 4 easy to follow sections, and they're all going to build on each other. So first, we get Claude working continuously without stopping. Then we make it capable of bigger jobs without the quality falling apart. Then we get it off your laptop entirely. And lastly, we open it up to things you didn't think were even possible. And I'll build one live so you can see how quickly we can get these up and running. Each section will take you one step further. So let's start with autonomous workflows that don't stop halfway through a task. Because out of the box, Claude Code does quite often stop mid-task, and it asks for permission annoyingly often. Both of these things are very quick fixes. So first we've got auto mode. So auto mode is going to eliminate 90% of your approval problem. So up until recently, you only had 2 options. You could approve everything automatically using dangerously skip permissions, or you could sit there approving everything for yourself, even when most of the approvals kind of just look like jargon anyway. So consider auto mode as the middle option, and it's now Boris Cherny's #1 tip for getting things done with Claude Code, especially with what he calls multi-clauding or multi-workflows. So it's simple to turn on. You just hit Shift-Tab twice, and you can see auto mode on here. And it basically is using a classifier, basically a safety checker in the background, that watches everything that Claude wants to do. The safe stuff is just going to let through automatically. Then the genuinely risky stuff, like deleting files or touching something that it genuinely shouldn't be doing, that's the only time it's going to stop and ask you for approval. So now we've saved time on approvals. How do we get it to run until it's fully complete? And this is where /goal comes in. So set a goal Claude checks before stopping. So a normal prompt runs once and it stops. So it decides for itself when it's actually finished. And often that results in early finishes before your definition of done is actually checked. So /goal flips that logic and you define what done actually looks like. So when you type in /goal, you then enter the condition that determines it done. And then Claude has to keep working turn after turn until that condition is actually true, or it meets your criteria to actually just stop the task. And it does this because there's a second independent Claude agent that audits the work before the goal is actually allowed to close. So it can't just declare itself finished, and it will basically continue to spin out a new iteration and run until the loop is done. Now you can make goal even more powerful by applying a done condition to a task that you do every single day by combining it with the /loop feature. So basically here we can set an interval or a cadence at which this will run, and then enter a prompt that has goal in. And what that allows us to do is combine it with loop for short running tasks under 3 days, or actually for longer running tasks, we can combine it with /routines for when we want the schedule to run every week, for example. So think about a task like clearing your inbox. The routine is going to fire the job once a day or once a week, and the goal is going to work out whether the task is complete. So maybe our task is to clear our inbox and put all the messages into relevant labeled folders. And then the definition of done is, for example, when the inbox is completely empty every time it runs. So the loop or routine sets the cadence, and the goal sets the definition of what done looks like, whilst you're not also required to approve anything that's not dangerous because we're using auto mode. Now that being said, you can run things autonomously now, but it doesn't mean that the quality of outputs is going to be great for larger tasks by just using Claude Code out of the box. It's great for small tasks, but how do you actually produce things to a high quality when lots of thinking or logic is required? And that brings us directly to phase 2, which is completing bigger jobs without the quality degrading. But before we jump into that, if you're enjoying the content so far, then please give the video a like and subscribe below, because it helps me make more content like this. But the quality degrading happens for a couple of reasons. Firstly, we've got context drop. So as we bloat the context, which happens over long conversations, it's not able to retain all that information in there. Therefore, it lacks proper judgment. It can't recall all the information you've told it. And number 2, it's all about applied effort level, or in AI terms, the number of tokens that we assign to thinking and reasoning. So if we don't assign enough for a large problem, we're not going to get a good result. So when by default we use a reasoning model, it sets a number of tokens to reason through to get a good answer. But we can actually spend more tokens in favor of increasing the time spent on the thought process that the AI model is spending to get a better result. And the 2 fixes for these problems are incredibly simple. It's all about effort and planning. So let's talk about effort first. we've got an effort slider built into Claude Code. So if you type in /effort, you can see that we can set the effort level for model usage. And that's basically a dial for how hard Claude thinks about a task. We can choose anything between low all the way to max, and then even ultra code. Now, ultra code takes it one level further by spinning out multiple sub-agents and its own workflow patterns designed to tackle the task that you've given it. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. But again, the compromise is that it takes a significant number of tokens for higher effort, like extra high, max, and ultra code. So you only want to do this for the tasks that actually warrant it. And then we've got planning. So we want planning, but we want planning in the right place. So the old advice was to go Shift Tab a couple of times, stick on plan mode, and that's still decent for 80% of things. But by default, the plan actually gets saved to a throwaway folder outside of all of our context and project folders. So Claude Code reads it reliably for a couple of times, but then as soon as we start compacting the context, it actually starts to lose sight of the plan that we made in the first place. So I'd highly recommend getting the plan inside a folder or a file inside your project folders. And that way you can keep feeding that plan into Claude and it can understand where it is against those set of steps. And then it's also worth delving deeper into exactly what ultra code does. So you can see that we've effectively got a dynamic workflow requested for this turn. And what this means is sometimes the job is too big for one context window, no matter how good the plan is, right? And it certainly won't be quick in one context window either. So that's where Claude can now write its own bespoke workflow for a task. So instead of doing everything itself in one window, it designs a structured plan for that specific job. Say, for example, we want to do deep research on a topic, then it spins out a team of agents who play into one of many workflow patterns. And there's 6 that Anthropic call the commonly used workflow patterns. So a deep research job, for example, might fan out into 4 different agents, researching one piece of information each or one source of information. And then we've got a 5th that's basically going to merge all those findings together and synthesize them. We might separately have a quality check going on that has one agent actually making claims inside a blog post and a second one trying to work out and validate those claims. And each of these agents gets a fresh window. So in each of them, we don't experience any context degradation. And the original objective never gets lost because no single context in an agent has too much to hold. And it's all coordinated by an orchestrator, which is effectively your main conversation window or your main agent. So now with all of these pieces, you can maintain high quality whilst also not being there to watch it. So if you're not there anyway, then why not just dispatch tasks from a device like a mobile? Then you can literally work from anywhere. But out of the box, I've tested everything, and as far as I can see, it's not entirely possible. So the built-in ways to reach Claude Code from your phone all have the same flaw. So we've got remote control, which is one command to set up. It opens a Claude app, but the session drops out after about 10 minutes, or if you disconnect. And then we've got channels that lets you talk to Claude from Telegram or Discord in about 5 minutes. So super simple setup again. But on its own, the session is only alive while you're actively in it. And the moment that you disconnect, the work stops. So it's not like your Hermes or your OpenClaw, which can do things in the background. It's not the dream that we've all been hoping for. But you can actually build it yourself. It's a bit hacky, but there's a workaround. The fix is to run Claude Code somewhere that never sleeps. So you're no longer relying on your laptop or PC being open. So you're going to use a cheap VPS, like $15 a month. And then to have it always on for dispatching tasks, you can actually pair 2 things together. So you use the inbuilt channels plus a service or framework called tmux to keep the session open continuously. So tmux keeps it alive, and it basically means you can dispatch tasks and walk away. So I've done an entire video on this where you can check out the video linked in the description for a guide on this setup specifically. So what this enables is that we've got now high quality outputs. They're dispatched from your mobile and they don't stop working until they've hit that completion criteria. So the only thing left to show you is that Claude can actually do tasks that you never thought were even possible. So the goal of this final phase then is to open your imagination to what's actually automatable now. If you think back 12 months ago, this kind of stuff was just off limits. But the limitation now isn't missing features. It's actually just what you think is possible inside your head, because most things actually are now. So 2 things I want to quickly demo. The first are connectors, and it's the one to start with because it needs 0 technical setup. So in the desktop app, inside customize, you can hit connectors, and you've basically got a whole bunch of pre-built connections, including Claude in Chrome. You can install a Chrome extension to be able to use this. But if you hit the plus here, you've got browse connections, and you can see there are literally hundreds of connections that can connect to any of your apps. They're plug and play, and they can basically work in any of the apps that you use day to day. You just authorize it once with your normal login, and then you talk to it in plain English. And if it's not inside here, you can connect it up to pretty much any app using MCPs as well. And the second bit is even more impressive. So Claude can now do things in your browser where it effectively emulates you. It can click through your apps and work out which buttons to actually click. So it can go into your browser and do tasks on your behalf. It's in research preview and macOS first. So it's still super early, but it's still very impressive. It is quite slow though. But where I see the most value here is for those enterprise apps that you potentially use that are old and clunky. They're stored on your desktop or on the browser, and there's no chance of getting any API access to them. But you do a manual, repetitive task. And all we need to do is tell AI to achieve a goal, and it will work out the steps by taking screenshots as it goes through. So let's quickly demo it. So we typed in, open my browser, go to my school community, school.com/scrapes, read all member posts from the last 24 hours and write me a priority list in 3 groups, whether it needs me today, whether it can wait, and any wins that we can go back and celebrate with the members. Give me a 1-line summary of each. Do not reply to any. So I still want the human touch of me actually going in and replying to these, but I want to understand from a backlog of messages, a summary digest, and it needs to do that by actually going directly to the browser, taking screenshots of those and bringing those back and then summarizing them as text. So it's gone through and ran a bunch of commands. It's gone into Claude in Chrome, taken a bunch of actions, and then literally come back. I think it was 15 minutes later, and it said, okay, there were 9 member posts in the last 25 hours. So it's gone 1 and above to do 25. Here's your priority list. So 2 people need my help today. It summarizes exactly what they need. 4 people have just written informational posts, and then 3 others are basically celebrating their wins on what they've built inside the community. And you can see, for example, it's even given me a link directly to the post. So now it shortcuts my method of going directly to that post and replying directly to this community post. Now, this is a very simple example, but hopefully that's opened your imagination to what's actually possible. And when you combine it with all the other 3 phases that we mentioned, you have now got much closer to those Claude Code promises. It's running repetitive work across your tools, handling your ops, your outreach, your admin, and working effectively while you sleep, effectively texting it from a mobile phone. Appreciate you watching, and if you enjoyed the content, then check out the community, our Agentic Academy, in the description below. These are exactly the kind of things that we're building on every single week with over 1,400 others. So stick around for the next video where we add in your business context so that every result that you get from Claude is contextualized specifically to you or your business.